Welcome, good evening. I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later in the program, we'll take a look at Peyton Manning. Well, not Peyton personally, but we'll do that. Wayne Laugesen will join us for that. But first, a guy I'm a real fan of. Sorry, that might ruin your re-election chances. Spencer Swalm from District 36 down in Centennial. Thanks for being here.
37,
37, close enough.
John, glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invitation.
I want to talk a little bit about RTD and how I got to know you well before you became a legislator. I was on the RTD board a gazillion years ago, and I helped defeat a ridiculous tax increase back in 1997 called FasTracks, and it was to build out choo-choo lines everywhere, and we were wise enough to see a bad thing when it was happening. And then 7 years later, because it's on a 7-year cycle apparently, 2004, RTD puts on the ballot this massive tax increase for what they called FasTracks. And it looked really good. I mean, we're going to get rail lines here and HOT lanes there and heavy rail over there and parking rides everywhere. It was going to be done on time and on budget. And from your point of view as a financial guy in private sector, you and I kind of bumped into each other in that world when you said, wait a second, this isn't going to work. And you put life and limb online and really worked hard to try to defeat that. And we got very close, but we were outspent. They had $3-4 million to our $10,000 or something like that. They bought the election. What made you so tuned in to that one issue as a civilian?
John, I actually got involved in watching RTD way back in the early 1980s. You might remember that at one point RTD went on strike. And the pundits and all believed that the entire city was going to grind to a halt. They were out on strike and nobody missed them. And so that's really when I got involved with RTD. And that's when I first met the Independence Institute. I did a research paper for the Independence Institute on RTD and basically said, it has no impact. It's a complete waste of money.
Isn't it amazing? During that strike, traffic levels actually went down, which I found to be pretty amazing. And RTD carries 2% of the population, and most importantly, I'm concerned about transit-dependent people who can't afford a car, for some reason can't drive a car, and those people need help. I'm convinced that RTD doesn't help them at all. I believe that RTD is not in the business of moving people. RTD is in the business of moving money. But what turned you on to see that FasTracks was going to be the lie that it obviously turned out to be?
Well, John, I hate to say it, but you and I and the other people that fought it, we told them so. And it was not that we're some brilliant seers as to what was going to happen here. We were just looking at what had happened over and over around the country on these big rail projects. They never come in on time or on budget. And this is simply a repetition of what we've seen over and over again with these big projects like this.
I guess, but what was amazing for me is I was a former chairman of the board, so I could see the lie up close and personal. I could see it, and I said, I've been there, I've done this before, I know this is a lie. And that's what it is. But for you, somebody who hasn't been into it, one of the reasons why RTD gets away with what they do is because most people, Republicans especially, don't keep an eye on RTD because it's not really their world. They don't think about it. And so here you have the 4th largest government in the state, and it doesn't get the accountability that it needs because very few people ride it. The people who do ride it don't have a whole lot of political say, and so the waste and mismanagement doesn't really bubble up. But there was something about it for you all those years that you were able to see that, and I wish other Republicans would get involved as well.
I look back on it, and you and I know. You just look at these trains and buses going by. How often do they go by empty? And you look at it, it's a waste. And so I think that what's happened with FasTracks, they're way over budget, way behind schedule. We're talking about decades to complete some of these lines at this point.
But remember, they're saying now, while they said it would be done by 2017 and on time and on budget, well, every city is going to get every toy at the same time. Great way to get that kumbaya effect by all the cities at the same time. Now they're saying wasn't our fault. We got hit by the perfect storm, inflation on the pricing of the stuff we wanted, but then the economy tanked, so our revenues were down. It's not our fault. We couldn't see it coming. Nobody saw it coming. Your response?
Well, we saw it coming. We knew this was going to happen. And, you know, it just stuns me that, you know, all the mayors all across this town lined up in support of it. And now they're paying the price. I saw today that the support in Longmont for this thing is falling apart, as well it should. They're looking at finally getting what they were promised in 2017, I think in 2042. Ridiculous. And
what scares me, and by the way, as one of the factors, this is how bad it was. And even I could know it was a lie when they said our financial projections are based on the assumption that the Denver economy and sales tax revenues will grow at least 6% a year for the next 30 years without a single dip. You know, I don't know anybody in the private sector who would accept those kind of economic assumptions, but RTD did. What worries me is now that the lie is coming out, we're stuck in this halfway point. For some reason, people want these choo-choo trains. They feel good, they look good. They don't do anything for traffic, they don't do anything for pollution, and they take money away from real projects, road projects that could ease traffic congestion. But a lot of these cities say, we were promised it, and RTD is saying, well, the first one was free, now you need to double down and pay more taxes. I'm worried that people don't know the full story.
Well, John, I share your concern. Unfortunately, for some reason that entirely escapes me, choo-choo trains are very sexy with the public. And I hope that they wake up and say this is a waste of money and we need to take this whole thing in a different direction. But if they put it on the ballot this fall, we're going to do our very best to expose it for what it is and, you know, compare. That's why I asked for an audit.
Let's get into that.
Yeah.
As a representative now, and you've been able to see this, you're able to put forward requests for the state auditor to look at different parts of government. How does that process work? You need to get other people to agree with you to bring it to the auditor for them to look at. How does that process work?
Good question, John. The state actually has an official called the auditor, and it's a highly respected office. And it's overseen by a legislative audit committee, which is a bipartisan, I believe it's 8-member committee, evenly divided between Republicans and Democrats.
Really?
Yes.
So there's not a majority here. So in most committees where whoever's in power, whatever party's in power, has a majority on a committee, this one's straight down the middle?
I believe so.
Wow.
So anyway, we put together a letter requesting an audit, and basically all the letter says, let's compare what we were promised back in 2004 by RTD when they sold FasTracks to the public, and let's compare that with what they're delivering right now. We presented that audit request this morning to the committee, and frankly, it wasn't even discussed. They said, absolutely, we need to do this. So
really? This bipartisan committee?
Bipartisan, 8-0.
Well, hang on a second, because it was when the Democrats had control of the legislature, and they do in the Senate now, but not in the House. They were the ones that gave RTD the power to go to the ballot box anytime they wanted to. Before they had to, the RTD had to go to the legislature and say, please, can we put something on the ballot? Because it's a creation of the state legislature. So even those same Democrats who supported this project are okay and supportive of an audit? That says a lot.
I think particularly people who represent the north side of town, because they feel like they're really getting the short end of the stick on this deal. So I think I'm particularly appreciative of Lois Tocktrop, senator from up on the north side of town.
Democrat.
Yep. I explained the concept to her, and she said, absolutely, we need to do this. So she's on the committee, and again, everyone on the committee, without really even any hesitation, approved the audit request.
Well, great, because it's important that we get that audit. If people are going to vote on this thing again, and it's going to be put on the ballot again, we want to know the truth. So the big question comes out, terrific, when do we see the results of the audit and find out why they lied to us?
John, unfortunately, the way the audit process works is every time they approve an audit, you're simply put in a queue. And the way the queue is set up right now, we're not going to get the result of this audit for about 1.5 years, which is long after the election is actually scheduled. But I think that the audit request has already served a useful purpose. It's publicized the issue that this is something that the people of this state need to know about. They need to know really what were the facts behind this thing. And even though there's going to be a long delay before the audit is actually done and released to the public, there's another path that I'm going to pursue, and that's through the Legislative Council down at the Capitol. It's a bipartisan or nonpartisan research arm of the legislature. And I'm going to take the same letter, and I already did it today, submitted it to the Legislative Council and asked them to look into the very same issues that we're asking the state auditor to look at. And frankly, if that Legislative Council research comes back the way I think it might, then maybe the audit becomes irrelevant, especially if the vote has already been scheduled.
Now, do you have the authority to commit to the Legislative Council, this group that does analysis for all your legislation? Can you just walk in there and say, give me an analysis of this, or do you have to go through a process to get that okayed? No,
I can just request that.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you get them to do my taxes?
Well, I can ask.
Well, that would be good. That would be terrific. What do you suspect? And I know we can't say for fact. From my point of view, having served on the RTD board, being the chairman of the board, knowing what this is about, this is light rail and FasTracks was nothing more than a huge corporate welfare scandal. And this will be Colorado's biggest boondoggle in our history. And I think it'll stand for a long time. This was corporations getting paid off through this tax increase. I think of groups like Siemens that makes the trolley cars. They gave a nice $50,000 or $100,000 gift to the campaign,
yep.
And within a couple of years they got $55 million worth of contracts. You can go through whether it's Excel or the bond dealers, the tax accountants, the construction guys. These are the ones who put in millions of dollars, literally, to sell this image. Will people understand that this is not about transportation? In fact, it's sucking money away from our roads, and that they understand this is about rich guys getting richer.
John, I hope so. I hope so, but we'll just have to see. I mean, because if it goes on the ballot this fall, there will be a few of us, I think, that will really try to make a fight of it, but there will be the same corporate interests, people who stand to make a lot of money if this project goes forward, the contractors, the real estate developers, so on and so forth. And there's really nobody on the other side that's going to make a lot of money if FasTracks, this tax increase, is defeated. So it's sort of David and Goliath kind of situation.
It hasn't changed. Representative, thank you for doing this, and thank you for standing up when it wasn't popular to stand up and say this was a fib. Spencer Swalm, thank you. Stay tuned. We're going to talk football.